They'd have to put you on the payroll.
All right, we are live on YouTube.
Super. All right. Thanks, everybody, and welcome to the House Energy and Digital Infrastructure Committee. It is Friday, February 28th, and we are continuing our practice of ensuring that everyone who introduces a bill that's referred to our committee has an opportunity to pitch the bill to our team. So we are here today with Representative Rob North, who's going to talk to us for maybe 10 or 15 minutes about H159. Rep North, we'll go around and introduce ourselves. We always allow everybody in the room the opportunity to introduce themselves, and then we'll turn it over to you for the record. So I'm Representative Kathleen James from the Bennington 4 District.
I'm Scott Campbell from St. Johnsbury, Caledonia Essence.
Richard Bailey, Lamoille 2.
Chris Morrow, Wyndham, Windsor, Bennington.
Michael Southworth, Caledonia 2.
Christopher Howland, Rutland 4.
Garrett Torrey, Washington 2.
Graham Kleffner, Chittenden 13, Burlington.
Okay.
On the screen.
Laura Sibilia, Wyndham 2.
Jack Locker, Committee Assistant.
Great. Would our guests like
Steve
to?
Thurston, Ferrisburg. I'm just here in support of Rob.
Great.
Thomas Weiss. I am a civil engineer resident of Montpelier and spent the last year and 2/3 on the Public Utilities Commission's proceedings on the Clean Heat Standards.
Super. Thank you. All right. For the record.
Yes, good morning. My name is Representative Rob North. I live in Ferrisburg. I represent the Greater Virgins area. And I serve on the Environment Committee in the House. So I guess I would like to share with you a presentation. Jack showed me how to do this earlier. Let's see if I can remember how to do it. Oh, we gotta hit a share button first. Okay.
Right. Now you get to pull up the PowerPoint.
Okay. There we go. So, okay. Yes, I'm here to talk about H159, which is a simple bill to just repeal in its entirety the Renewable Energy Standard, RES. Okay, why do we want to repeal the Renewable Energy Standard? Primarily for three top-level reasons: affordability, reliability, and prosperity. And really the prosperity is simply the result of affordability and reliability. If we have affordable energy and we have reliable energy, that directly leads to the ability for all to prosper. Without affordable energy, you end up being severely stunted in the ability for all members of the society to prosper. Might make note that Vermont pays 50% above the median U.S. electric rate. I'll show some details on that in a moment. And under the category of reliability, we'll talk a little bit about the fact that renewable energy, notably wind and solar, are not reliable energy sources. So let's talk about that high cost. The renewable energy drives high cost. It does not lower cost, it drives cost. All of the New England states have very similar laws to what Vermont has, renewable energy standard type laws. And thus all 10 of the New England states, all 6 of the New England states are in the top 10 most expensive electric rates. You can see on the right-hand side, I know you can't read it specifically, but you can see highlighted in yellow are the 6 New England states plus New Jersey and New York, which also have res type laws, and they're all right at the top, right at the top of the list. The green lines represent the median price for electricity throughout the 50 states. Within the United States. And a reason why there's 2 of them is because I have 2 columns, one for last December's energy prices and one for this January's energy prices. They're very similar. Things don't change much, but I thought I'd show 2 just for example. But the electric rate that we pay in Vermont, 18.5 cents per kilowatt hour, is 50% higher than the than the median rate throughout the United States of about 12.4 cents per kilowatt hour. And so comparing ourselves to the other New England states is really not giving a fair or broad view, because all of the New England states have the same kind of laws in place that we have. So we're all up near the top of the bracket. However, New Hampshire, just this past week, got out of its renewable energy standard. So that was big news. Interestingly, Vermont was the last one in of the New England states. We were the sixth one in to put RES HIP laws in place. So it's not like we were leading the charge, plowing new snow here on this. We were kind of following the rest, and now it looks like they're starting to beg off for the reasons that I'm talking about here today. Okay, so why? How does renewable energy drive high costs? Well, if you define renewable as it's defined in our renewable energy standard as wind, solar, hydro, and biomass, then and you take a look at how those prices per kilowatt hour, or in this case is per megawatt hour, compare to other types of energy sources, you can see that wind and solar are out on the right-hand side, costing much more when you take into account in the levelized cost of energy, the overbuilding and curtailment. And what is that? It's complex words for the fact that, and we'll talk about this in a little bit, how unreliable, how cyclic, how up and down the availability of wind and solar energy are, that there's no sun shining at night, and there's frequently days where it's calm. So you have to build between 3 and 6 times more energy capacity of wind and solar to, on average, get the amount of energy you're looking for. So you have to build way more, and we'll talk about that in a moment. I got a chart on that. So solar net metering, it turned out, if you specifically focus on solar, and you're really specifically talking about, well, why do we do, if the concept behind doing solar is to extract or prevent emitting more carbon dioxide into the air as a carbon reduction, it turns out that net metering is the most expensive way in terms of extracting or preventing carbon from going into the atmosphere, into the environment. There are much more effective, much more efficient ways. So you can see solar net metering for large solar, 150 kilowatt is about $3,000. I think that's per ton of carbon saved, whereas solar net metering at the house level, individual house, 5 kilowatt type sizes are didn't even fit on the chart. $9,000 per ton of carbon saved. Whereas if you just simply go with weatherizing, just the least expensive energy is the energy you didn't use, right? So weatherizing, reducing energy usage through primarily, really, I mean, the Vermont efficiency, the electric efficiency portfolio described a whole host of ways to do that, and that is much more efficient at preventing carbon than installing solar panels. Moving on, so solar net metering has cost Vermonters to date, if we project ahead through 2025 at the given trend, $544 million. That's almost $500 million in total. Above, and that what the way this is calculated, in accordance, I'm talking with TJ Ford from the Department of Public Service, is how much more we've paid for electricity generated by renewable sources, notably net metering, in this case is solar, over what the standard electric rate is you can buy off the New England grid. And you just accumulate that from the time we started doing this in 2010 to today, you're over $500 million. All right. So, but people frequently ask, well, but we're in a significant climate change environment, and don't we need to do our part? Don't we need to be out there leading, doing what Vermonters do best, which is leading the way toward environmental conservation? Well, we are doing way more. In fact, we're doing 7 times more than our part already. If you just look at the per capita spending on solar subsidies, Vermont is 7 times higher than the U.S. average. So we are already by far doing our part, and it's costing us fortune. So so that's the whole expense issue and unaffordability surrounding renewable sources, specifically focusing there really heavily on solar and somewhat on wind. Now let's talk a little bit about the unreliable nature of wind and solar. everybody knows that when there's solar panels and a windmill, if there's no wind and no sun, you get no electricity, right? You're dependent on the weather for that. So it required overbuilding, as I mentioned before. It turns out for windmills, you got to build 3 times more capacity for wind electric generation, and 6 times more solar capacity for solar electric generation to get on average the amount that you're looking for. So, like, for example, if you wanted to get 100 kilowatt, I'm just picking a number, 100 kilowatt on average out of a solar panel, you have to install 600 kilowatts worth of panels so that on average over the year you can produce 1 kilowatt. And that's just because the sun doesn't shine at night, it's cloudy, they get covered with snow. It's about 15% to 20% effectiveness rate, and wind the same. It's about a 35% effectiveness rate. So if we were to go all in and say, well, we want 100% renewable in Vermont, and yeah, so the graph on the upper right just shows the this was in the Midwest, the actual graph in time where there are a multitude of grids. This is focusing on the MISO grid. I think it's the Mid America ISO grid. This is what actually happened, and what the available electric power from wind and solar looked like. And you can see that it's very tiny. But the idea is just to see how much it goes up and down. But there's that brief span there. This was back in February a couple of years ago when they had that storm in the Midwest, went all the way down to Texas, where there was. Yes.
Wondering how many slides you have left. We have our next witness here. I want to allow time
Okay.
for a few comments and questions. And we do 15-minute blocks.
Yep.
Okay.
What time did we actually start? I should have noted that. It was like
We
4.
started at 10:50.
Yeah, so I got 5 more minutes. Great, thank you.
But well, and we need to allow time for a few questions and comments. I just wondered how many slides you had left.
Yep, just a couple more.
Okay.
Just a couple more. So yeah, we would have to cover Vermont with 30,000 acres of solar arrays and cover 220 miles of ridgetop turbines to get to 100% renewable. And I don't know that anybody wants all of our ridgetop covered with wind turbines. And then also therefore requires battery storage, because given when you're in the valley, and battery storage is extremely expensive. Just 1 day's worth of battery storage to cover Vermont's energy is about $2 billion. Whereas you can install a cyclic gas turbine generator for about half that cost that reliably supplies all of Vermont's needs. All right, so therefore it's duplicate energy. Wind and solar are unreliable, calm, cloudy, nighttime. So it requires 100% duplicate standby reliable energy. So you can't just have renewable. You've got to also have the standard forms of energy production so that you can deal with the troughs in the curve when renewable energy is not available. So right now, ISO New England is paying fossil fuel power plants to sit idle to ensure that we have the necessary reliable backup power. These are called capacity or out-of-market payments. We're doing this right now. We're paying for twice the energy. So we're paying for electricity that isn't being generated. In conclusion, Vermonters need you to repeal the renewable energy standard for the reason of affordability, reliability, and prosperity. You can't have both. You can either have reliable, affordable grid, or you're going to have all in wind and solar subsidies. You can't have both. So I highly recommend that you take H159 off the wall, repeal the res, and support the governor's energy bill 289. And that's well,
We probably have, and Representative Hedrick, I'm sorry, can you stay a few? Okay, great. We probably have a few questions or comments from the committee. Representative Campbell?
I guess I'm just wondering, what would be the alternative? Just keep burning fossil fuels? That's the alternative?
I am perfectly happy. In fact, I am right now looking into putting some solar panels on my house. But what I don't want to happen or continue to happen is pouring state money into the essentially purchasing of all of that with all the incentives that we have currently through the res. If people want to do it on their own, like I may do it, I have a friend who lives completely off grid and he has solar panels up. So he's not looking at the net metering reasons for. He just wants to be independent, collect his own energy. Great. I think and Vermonters are really good at doing that, right? We're really good at being environmentally conscious and doing that. So it's just
on an individual level, that's a great,
yeah.
That's a great thing. But I wonder how that what do we do as a society, as an economy?
Yeah.
In Vermont and in New England, New England power is expensive, not just because, certainly not even primarily because of renewables. It's just an expensive region.
Yeah.
Because of like generation. But,
I think one of the reasons why it's so expensive is we have gotten out of the nuclear business. Like we need to bring nuclear back. It's a very inexpensive way of generating electricity.
Representative Kleppner?
Thank you. I'm noticing your bumper sticker on your computer that says Vermont, we were green before green was cool. And I'm wondering if we will continue to be green after green stops being cool. And would hope that we would. So you and I have talked, and we talked about the high prices of electricity in New England, and reconciling the data you had with what we heard from the PUC. I spent some time with the numbers, and I apologize I didn't have time to avoid springing this on you here without giving you time to think about it. But I would point out just a couple things that I believe to be true. One is that the PUC testified that the res is increasing our electricity prices by about 4% now. So the 50% gap between median and where we are, like only 4% of that is the res. And so I was curious, well, what are the other reasons? And from the analysis that I read, New England in general is high, and New Hampshire's res was rather less demanding than ours, the one they're getting rid of. And so presumably had an even smaller effect on their prices. Presumably, I don't know that. But the energy industry analysts suggest that New England's prices in general are high because we rely on expensive imported fossil fuels. And in other parts of the country, Texas has a huge amount of solar, and they produce their own solar and they produce their own natural gas and their own oil and all that stuff. Wyoming mines its own coal and uses that. So I think we can't attribute much of our prices to the res. Again, the PUC said it was 4%, and as we go to 100, it may be as much as 8% on our electric bills. The other bit of quick math I did. Again, not at all questioning the number that we have spent $544 million more than we would have without it. But on a per person per month basis, it's like $6 a month. And I'm not saying, for a family of four, that's $24 a month. That's real money. But it's just a different way of looking at what sounds like a very big number.
Yeah, it is a very big number. And I think if you heard TJ pour all the way out, you would have understood that small 4% number is just the price of the RECs, the renewable energy credits, which is a small fraction of that $544 million. That's not the overmarket price that we're paying for the solar and energy that we're generating. The net metering is over market price.
Representative Sibilia, I see you hovering in the sky.
Thanks, Madam Chair, and I apologize for not being in the committee with you, Representative North. I'm not feeling well and trying to keep from contaminating the committee. Just two questions I had for you. You're aware that the H289, the governor's proposal, does not in fact call for the repeal of the res?
Yes.
Okay, and then the other is on if you have had the opportunity to look at the ISO New England app, which allows us to see what what the resources are on the grid at this time, as Representative Kleppner noted, we get a pretty high amount of natural gas, although lower than it typically is right now. We're running about 33% natural gas in New England, 32% nuclear, and 22% renewables. Have you had the opportunity to log on to that? It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I have. Which is one of the points I was trying to make earlier, that just comparing ourselves to ISO New England, granted, that's the grid we're on. We don't have a whole lot of choice going outside of that grid, but all of the New England states have these same kind of laws in place. So they're all,
This may all be
Hey.
rendered. I just pulled up the ISO website and it shows the price of electricity in all the New England states right now is zero. So I think cheap power equals prosperity.
Yeah.
I think we're in good shape.
All right. We are over time. So unless folks have a final
Yeah,
comment,
Madam Chair.
yeah,
Sorry,
Representative.
just to finish my last point.
Yeah.
So, other states have more abundant renewable fracked gas, which I think is pretty opposite what we have seen in terms of what we would expect Vermonters to support and probably New Englanders to support. We've seen expansions of natural gas lines defeated in our state to the south, and also have much more renewables for wind out in the Midwest and solar. And so our reliance on imported fossil fuels contributes greatly to our volatility for sure in our pricing. So I thank you for the detailed presentation.
All right. Thanks so much, everybody. And thank you.
Thanks
Yeah,
for
thank
coming.
you, Representative
Appreciate
North.
it.
Yeah.
Thanks, Rob.
Appreciate your time. And Representative Hedrick, sorry to keep you waiting.
If I can get you back on time.
Well, we started a little bit late, which was our fault. All righty, we have another bill introduction. And for the record,
Hello, yes, for the record, my name is Troy Hedrick. I'm a representative from Burlington. Representative Kleppner, I have good news for you. I think I could save Bill's families that $6 a month.
Wonderful.
Yeah. This is Bill H-265, eliminating convenience fees on municipal utility payments. I just want to talk a little bit about the genesis of this bill because it's not necessarily one that was mine. And we haven't seen, I don't think, no, we haven't seen a lot of by request bills. So for new folks, sometimes you'll see a bill get introduced with a parenthetical by request. Essentially, that means not my idea, but I've been asked to introduce this. I'll give you an example. This is a tangent. I still think I'll have you back on track. So I go to my neighborhood planning assembly meetings, and that's where this came from too. But prior to that, somebody came up to me and said, "Hey, Troy, I don't think college students should be able to vote in municipal elections." But pitching a bill to me. And so I stopped him and I said, we're going to start on very different sides of this coin. I'm a big fan of inclusive democracy. I have literally spent my entire professional career celebrating and encouraging college students to become involved. Nonetheless, I listened and I drafted the bill request on his behalf that would prohibit college students from voting in municipal elections, and presented it back to him. I said, this is, I checked in with lead counsel, everything. I would have introduced that by request, right? That would have flagged the body to say, did not want to do this, but here we are. This is similar, but I didn't feel the need to flag it because I think it's an interesting question and one that probably merits some consideration. Let me do a very brief what this bill does, what this bill does not do. It's very simply, it's a pretty straightforward bill. I'm not saying it's not necessarily an absolutely palatable bill, but it prohibits convenience fees. Municipal utilities would be barred from imposing additional charges such as processing or convenience fees on ratepayers who are choosing to make those payments through for their utility bills, online methods, electronic methods. It mandates the absorption of the cost, the resulting cost, to the municipalities. That's how this gets socialized. It doesn't go back to all ratepayers. It goes back to the municipalities into their general operating budgets, ensuring that ratepayers are not directly burdened by the anticipated increase in costs. The bill would ensure financial transparency. It requires that municipalities disclose the costs related to online payment systems in their annual budgets, and clearly then identifies any impact those increasing costs would have on rate increases. It briefly defines utilities, so providers of electric, water, wastewater, or communications, encourages more cost efficient payment systems. So it asks the state treasurer, tasks them with offering guidance to municipalities on either negotiating favorable terms with a third party payment processor, or exploring fee-free payment options such as automated clearinghouse, ACH, bank to bank transfer sort of systems. And then it also proposes a grant program. The Secretary of State, in collaboration with the treasurer and BLCT, the League of Cities and Towns, would be directed to design a grant program aimed at assisting municipalities with transitioning to more modern, cost-effective online payment systems that don't necessarily have convenience fees. Let me do a very quick what this bill does not do. It does not mandate any sort of specific payment platform. The bill does not require municipalities to adopt any particular online payment platform or service provider. It does not eliminate traditional payment methods by any way. It doesn't compel ratepayers to use online payment systems. Does not, or, more traditional, it doesn't outlaw more traditional payment options like walking down to the utility and writing a check like that. It does not provide any state funding. The bill does not allocate state funds to cover the cost municipalities might incur. It does require municipalities to absorb that through their operating budgets. It does not in any way regulate private utilities. So the provisions apply solely to municipal utilities. Really, this is an equity. So this came out of literally a constituent had one of their, I don't remember which, one of their utility bills with them and said, what is this? Why am I paying a convenience fee? That doesn't feel very convenient to me. And we started talking. I said, do you want me to draft this up? So I did. And that is what is before you with H265. Really, by eliminating additional fees, this is a matter of equity for lower income folks who that might be an impact, right? I personally, I absorb the cost. I understand why it's there. There are folks for whom this would make a difference on a monthly basis. That's sort of the rationale for putting this forward. I always do anticipated questions. I'm more than happy to whip through my anticipated questions. Or if you want to just toss off questions, I'm more than happy to do that too.
So Representative Southworth?
Thank you. Was there any thought or looking into how the cost bearing by the municipalities is going to in turn go back to the ratepayers?
Yeah, I think that's an incredibly valid question. Right. I personally, philosophically, avoid that argument when I don't think that has to happen, right? I think, right, how are we going to socialize this? That's the question. The bill proposes that the municipality should absorb it and not throw it back on the ratepayer. I'm sure there's disagreement about whether or not that's
reality is it can be quite a substantial amount of money.
Right.
And
I agree.
We know that municipalities always struggle with their budget.
Yeah.
And that can affect their ability to maintain, that can affect a bunch of different things within that municipality. And I think that's a very high concern.
Yeah, no argument. I do think the ACH question, the automated bank to bank transfer, I think there are things you might want to look at about whether or not that is feasible. Free online payment systems that are possible by direct deposit, for example. Yeah, so that's the one part in here that I think is the most compelling question that stays with me, having done the brief amount of work I did on the topic. This is not a topic I had ever really looked at before. It was fun to play with. Yeah, but I think your question is absolutely valid. Thank you.
Yeah, I would just point out that if you stop that source of revenue to towns, they have two choices. One is to replace it with a new revenue source, which is raising other fees or raising taxes. And the other is to cut something out of their municipal budget. So I think Representative Southworth's point is well taken. It will be in effect one way or the other. If they choose to raise taxes, it does end up on, if they choose to raise property taxes, it ends up back on everybody who owns or who is renting
Right.
one way.
And I would say the counter point to be made about that impact is that it would be felt from an equity standpoint by folks who can least afford even a $6 convenience fee right
Yeah.
now.
And do you have any sense for the cost to a municipality of processing versus the fees they're charging?
I didn't do any JFO work with this.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a reasonable question, certainly.
Rick Howard?
If I pay my property tax bill with a,
These are utilities, just so, yeah.
well, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
The point being that my town puts a 3% fee on using a credit card.
Yep.
And I imagine the utility portion utilities would be subject to about that amount to pay the processor.
Yeah.
And it's 3%, whether it's once a month or.
Right.
And many people are using their credit cards for their own convenience. And I don't feel that the other utility people should pay any additional costs that are going to escalate the cost to run the municipal service. And you're taking this out to any municipality. So it means it's, even if a town doesn't run an electric company, it's on their municipal water service or all those bills. And if somebody who can least afford to borrow on credit is borrowing with their convenience fee on their credit card, I'm assuming this is all is the convenience fee is for using some other means other than a check or cash
Online, yeah.
or an online service. And so we're putting their utility payment into their most expensive source of credit and compounding. The person who can least afford it is transposing costs to themselves by borrowing money from an expensive source. Right.
Interesting.
Okay,
It's an interesting observation.
yep, one more.
Yeah, and maybe you've already answered this. Have you found out what kind of costs these are to the utilities? There were the utility that was charging your constituent.
I have not done any JFO request on this, so I don't have an answer for that.
So we don't know whether it's one person or 20 people. Or
We don't know that, and we don't know if it's a $3 convenience fee or a $6 convenience fee.
Right percentage.
yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Especially with Rick Torrey? I was just gonna say, especially with a short form bill or a bill that's submitted by request. We typically don't ask our legislative council or joint fiscal office to invest much time in analysis until if a committee's gonna even take it up. Rick Torrey?
No, I appreciate this. A lot of my towns don't have utilities, but property taxes are an issue. I'm just wondering, because towns use local banks, if maybe the bank could play a different role in these payments and be able to be more.
That's the
competitive.
ACH question.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a really valid possible solution here that wouldn't be a financial impact. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much for coming in, Representative Hedrick.
Certainly.
We appreciate your time. Sorry we were running a little bit late.
You're good. I think you're
Uh,
back on track, yeah?
all right.
Thank you.
Thanks, Troy.
Thanks.
All right.